The neon lights of Kepler Station pulsed in chaotic rhythms, casting harsh shadows across the crowded starport. Traders barked prices in a dozen alien tongues, while cargo haulers rumbled past, their exhaust adding to the acrid haze that hung perpetually in the air. Through this maze of indifference wandered a figure that seemed invisible to the galaxy, a frail, cloaked alien woman, her movements uncertain, her presence dismissed by every passerby. Vendors shooed her away from their stalls with irritated gestures. Security guards looked through her as if she were empty space, and other aliens whispered cruel jokes about drifters and space waste. She stumbled near a food cart, and the owner barked at her to move along before she scared away paying customers. Marcus Chen, 17 and perpetually broke, watched from his perch on a shipping container where he'd been waiting for his transport off this rust bucket of a station. Something about the old woman nagged at him. Maybe it was how deliberately everyone ignored her, or the way she moved with a strange dignity despite her obvious frailty. When she dropped a small crystalline charm that clattered across the metal deck, Marcus jumped down without thinking. The charm was warm in his palm, pulsing with an inner light that seemed to respond to his touch. He called out to her, jogging to catch up, as she continued her slow shuffle through the crowd. "Hey, you dropped this," he said, holding out the crystal. When their hands touched as she took it back, Marcus felt something like electricity shoot up his arm, not painful, but startling, as if he'd touched a live wire connected to something vast and ancient. The woman's cloudy eyes sharpened for just a moment, studying his face with an intensity that made him step back. She spoke in heavily accented galactic common, her voice barely above a whisper. "You see me?" It wasn't a question. Marcus looked around at the bustling crowd, then back at her weathered features. "Of course, I see you. Are you okay? You look like you need to sit down." Without waiting for an answer, he guided her to a nearby bench, ignoring the snickers and headshakes from passing aliens. He pulled out his last energy bar and his water bottle, offering them to her. "When's the last time you ate something?" She stared at the simple offerings as if they were precious gems, her hands trembling slightly as she accepted them. Other aliens paused to watch the strange scene, a human teenager caring for what they clearly considered galactic refuse. A Zentarian merchant laughed harshly. "Kid, don't waste your credits on that beggar. She's been wandering this sector for months, probably addled by radiation exposure." His companion, a scaled Drachmarian, nodded agreement. "Humans are too soft. That's why you'll never last out here." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks, but kept his voice steady. "Maybe, but she's still a person." The woman had been listening, and now she looked up at Marcus with something approaching wonder. "Person," she repeated softly, as if the word were foreign. "Yes, I was. Once." As she sipped the water, Marcus noticed something odd: the way shadows seemed to bend around her, and how the harsh station lighting softened in her presence. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She clutched the crystalline charm tighter. "Name's ... Our power. Lost power." Her eyes grew distant. "But I remembered ... The Starfire Throne. Golden worlds bowing beneath twin suns." Marcus frowned, unsure if she was speaking metaphorically, or if age had truly addled her mind. "That sounds beautiful," he said diplomatically. She turned to him suddenly, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. "You have the sight. You see past the veil of flesh and time." Her intensity made him uncomfortable, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he found himself asking, "What am I supposed to see?" They walked together through the starport's lower levels, her pace slow but determined. Security drones tracked their movement with red sensor lights, but didn't approach. The woman seemed to know exactly where cameras had blind spots and which corridors would be empty. "Why did you help me?" she asked, as they passed through a dim maintenance tunnel, when no one else would. Marcus shrugged, though she couldn't see the gesture in the darkness. "My grandmother always said you judge a society by how it treats its most vulnerable. Everyone out there treated you like you were invisible. That's not right." Her laugh was soft and bitter. "Invisible, yes, but not always. Once, fleets knelt before my word. Once, peace reigned because I willed it so." In a shaft of light from an overhead grate, Marcus caught a glimpse of something impossible: faint, luminous tattoos covering her arms, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Ancient symbols that seemed to shift and writhe when he looked directly at them. "Those marks," he breathed. She pulled her cloak tighter. "Coronation scars. Every ruler of the astral dynasty bore them." She stopped walking and faced him fully. "I am Lysara Vexhai, last Empress of 7,000 worlds, guardian of the cosmic harmony, she who held the Starfire." Marcus blinked, processing this claim. Either she was completely delusional, or he'd just helped the most powerful being in galactic history by a sandwich. His doubt evaporated. When the bounty hunters found them, 5 figures in military-grade armor materialized from the shadows ahead, weapons drawn. Their leaders speaking in clipped, professional tones. By order of the Syndicate Council, surrender the fugitive designated exiled sovereign. Marcus stepped protectively in front of the old woman Lazaro, his heart hammering. She's just an old lady. The leader's helmet tilted toward him. Step aside, human. This doesn't concern your species. But Lysara's hand found Marcus's shoulder, and she whispered, "Run." What followed was chaos. Energy bolts seared the air where they'd been standing as they sprinted through cargo bays and neon-lit alleys, the hunters' heavy footsteps echoing behind them. Marcus had never been so terrified. But Lycerod, despite her apparent frailty, moved with fluid grace, occasionally raising her hand to deflect energy blasts with shimmering barriers of light. They found temporary refuge in an abandoned scrapyard, crouched behind the rusted hulk of an old transport ship, both breathing heavily. "This is insane," Marcus gasped. "Who are those people? Why do they want you?" Lysara's eyes were bright with adrenaline, and something else bright maybe, or remembrance. "Bounty hunters, hired by those who feared my return. My empire fell not to war, but to treachery. My own council, my trusted advisors, they sold our worlds to the Syndicate, for promises of power." Her voice broke slightly. "My family, my children, all dead. I alone escaped, and I have wandered for 3 centuries, waiting." Marcus stared at her. Waiting for what? She reached into a cloak and withdrew the crystalline charm. For the one the prophecy spoke of. A human who would see past appearances, who would show kindness without expectation of reward. The one who would help restore balance to a galaxy grown cruel. Marcus laughed shakily. "I'm nobody special. I'm just a kid trying to get off this station." But even as he spoke, she pressed the charm into his palm, and the moment it touched his skin, it flared with brilliant light, fusing to his hand like living crystal. Power flooded through him, not overwhelming, but warm and steady, like a river finding its course. "I am old," Lysara said, her voice gaining strength. "Too old to reclaim thrones or command fleets. But you are young, unmarked by cynicism or greed. The galaxy has forgotten what true leadership looks like." The charm pulsed, and Marcus felt something vast and ancient awakening within him, recognizing him as worthy. The hunters found them again, because they always did. This time there was nowhere to run. They stood in the center of the scrapyard, surrounded, weapons trained on them from every angle. The leader stepped forward, his voice mocking, touching. "Really? The great Empress, reduced to hiding behind a human child." Lysara swayed on her feet, the chase and the use of her powers having drained her severely. She began to collapse, and Marcus caught her, feeling how light she'd become, how fragile. The hunters laughed. "Hand over the relic and the old bat, and maybe we'll let you live to tell the story." Their leader sneered. Marcus looked down at Lysara's face, seeing not an empress, but a frightened, tired old woman who had been alone for centuries. "No," he said quietly. The charm in his hand began to glow. What happened next defied everything Marcus thought he knew about himself. Energy flowed through him like molten gold, creating a shield that sent the first wave of attackers flying. He moved without thinking, the charm extending into a weapon of pure light that carved through their armor and sent them scrambling for cover. "Impossible," the leader snarled. "A human child cannot wield the spire." But Marcus wasn't thinking about impossibility. He was thinking about an old woman that everyone had ignored, about kindness in a galaxy that had forgotten its meaning, about standing up when standing up mattered. "Maybe I can't," he said, deflecting another energy blast. "But I can try." The scrapyard around them began to change. Ancient systems buried beneath decades of debris came online, responding to the charm's activation. Mechanical guardians rose from the wreckage, sleek, beautiful constructs that had waited centuries for their empress's return. The bounty hunters found themselves outgunned and outnumbered, their leader's voice cracking with disbelief. "The temple-ship, ... It was here all along." They retreated in disorder, their confident professionalism shattered by forces they didn't understand. Marcus helped Lysara to her feet as the hidden ship revealed itself fully, shedding its disguise of rust and abandonment to show gleaming holes inscribed with the same luminous symbols that marked her skin. Inside the temple ship, Marcus found murals depicting Lysara in her glory, a figure of power and wisdom, ruling justly over countless worlds. But in the final mural, barely visible after centuries of damage, He saw himself as someone very like him standing beside the Starfire Throne, the crystal charm blazing in his hand. "You knew," he said wonderingly. "Somehow, you knew I would be here." Lysara smiled, looking younger somehow in the ship's golden light. "Hope," she said simply. "I never stopped hoping that someone would see past the disguise, past the centuries of loss and defeat. That someone would prove the prophecy true." Marcus felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders, but it wasn't crushing. It was liberating. For the first time in his 17 years, he understood his purpose. "I'm still just a kid from Earth," he said. "I don't know how to rule empires or command fleets." Lysara took his hands in hers, and he felt her strength flowing back, restored by proximity to her ancient ship and the activation of powers long dormant. "You know how to see suffering and act to stop it. You know how to show kindness to strangers. These are the only qualifications that matter." The charm pulsed between them, sealing a bond that would reshape the galaxy. As the temple ship lifted from Kepler Station, leaving the neon-lit chaos behind, Marcus stood beside Lysara on the bridge, watching stars wheel past the viewports. She had named him Guardian of the Starfire Throne, but he still felt like the same teenager who had helped an old woman, because it was the right thing to do. "What happens now?" he asked. Lysara's eyes held the wisdom of ages, but also the hope of new beginnings. "Now we remind the galaxy what it means to serve rather than to rule, to protect rather than to exploit. The Syndicate thought they had won when they destroyed my family and scattered my empire. They never imagined that an Empress might find something more powerful than armies or fleets." She looked at him with profound gratitude. A successor who chooses compassion over conquest. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. The lost Empress had returned, not with vengeance but with renewal. And beside her stood something the galaxy had never seen before. Human who wielded the Starfire, not as a weapon of dominion, but as a beacon of hope. The universe would never be the same, because a teenage boy had looked at an ignored old woman and seen someone worth helping. In a galaxy that had forgotten kindness, he had remembered what it meant to be human.